This podcast is part of the Deluxe Edition Network. To find other great shows on the network, head over to deluxeeditionnetwork.com. That's deluxeeditionnetwork.com.
What is going on, and welcome to Take on the World Nerd Stop with
Nathan Blaze
and Mike D. A little bit of housekeeping and explain the Nerd Stop. So, being called a nerd used to be a derogatory thing.
Now it's a title of honor, depending on who you ask. It's a title of honor.
The fact is I've been a nerd most of my life. People wouldn't think it, but like I've always been a comic book nerd, a D&D, video game nerd. So, I embraced the nerd. So I think everybody should. I tease this one all the time.
Oh, yeah. He's been a nerd most his life. I've been a nerd my entire life.
Yeah. So like when him and his friends have a D&D night, I always call it nerd night.
Yeah.
But you know what? There's nothing wrong with that. It's cool to be.
Very cool. Very cool indeed.
And that's only because I'm a nerd. So anyway, it's not a derogatory term. It's a term of endearment. So what Nathan and I have decided to do is embrace the nerdiness and focus a series of podcasts on stuff that we like, video games, comic books, and the such.
Technology, whatever the idea is for that week.
Yeah. So, we decided that this is our first official NerdCast.
NerdCast. I like that. Did you coin that just now?
I just coined that right now. So, for our first NerdCast, we wanted to do something that we both liked, is video games.
Well, he likes them. I love them.
So, well, I've loved them longer than you because I'm a little bit older.
Okay, well, my love adds up to more than yours.
Okay.
I do say so.
Like my foray into video games started with the arcade. So we were talking, do we want to do arcade cabinet games? And then we both decided that the home console is where we should start.
Yeah.
And do like a history of the home video game console. Now we're trying to stay away from the plug and plays.
Yeah, because they're almost a whole world of themselves.
Yeah, so we might cover that in a separate episode. We'll definitely cover cabinet games.
Oh yeah,
in another episode. And handhelds. That was the other one.
Yeah, because
the handhelds go way back too. I didn't realize.
Oh yeah.
I mean, if you go back to the Coleco football, which was one of the first handhelds.
Yeah, the little
it was just little LEDs on a screen.
Yeah.
I played it. I loved it. I don't care. But we decided to focus on the home console. And believe it or not, the history of the home console goes way back.
a lot farther than you'd expect.
So,
like everyone thinks home console, they think, oh, Nintendo or Sega or
Xbox or PlayStation 6
or even the educated few, Atari.
Atari was one of the best until a certain point. So, I'm going to let you touch this first one because this is your research here.
Ah, yes.
So now I'm going to preface this by saying this was not a home, but when we talked about video game consoles, we decided we were going to do commercially viable
Yeah.
So, but just to show you the depth of how far it goes back, go ahead, break.
Okay, so to debate the first game console. It's an argument whether it was a Pong console, the Atari, or whatever. Everyone has their sides. But this one's highly debatable, which is why we're kind of putting a footnote with this one.
This is an asterisk.
Yeah. So, this console is, well, it goes back. What was the year again?
1948.
Yeah, 19.
Can you, hold on, imagine that. That's a few years after World War II ended. 1948.
1948.
Nobody even conceived in their mind of a home video game console in 1948. Not everybody had TVs in 1948.
And yeah. And yet you have this. It's called the cathode ray tube entertainment device. Cathode ray tube entertainment device doesn't exactly roll off the tongue. And, well,
CRTED.
Yeah, I guess.
Credit.
Okay. Why don't you go get in your time machine and go tell them, hey. But, so, it was invented, and I'm probably gonna butcher the second name. But the first name, Thomas T. Goldsmith and Estel Ray. So they are the inventors. But this console, this device, entertainment device, never really got past. It was never deployed.
It never hit the market.
It never hit the market. It was
patented in 1948, and it only ever received a patent. It was not commercially distributed.
Yeah. So,
but tell them how it worked.
Okay. So, the cathode ray tube entertainment device. It was a cathode ray tube screen, and the way it worked is that, the cathode ray tube would light up. There's not too much game in it. But you would have these slides, or these decals that you'd put on the screen. You'd slide them over the screen. They were pre-made, and they would have come with it if it were to go out into the market. And you just put them in, and I guess that's your game.
Okay, so what you might not know is cathode ray tube is an old tube TV.
Yeah.
But cathode ray tube was, like the CRTs back then, were monocolor.
Yes.
So it was like the old green or orange screen print, something like that, like you would see on Fallout.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
So they would take these decals and put them over the TV, and that's how you would play the game.
Yeah.
I don't know what kind of controller it had. I don't know anything else about it, because when you brought this up to me, I was thinking, I didn't hear this one. Well, and I didn't research it because we were talking about commercially viable ones. But the thing to me is 1948.
I know. I figured that's why it was worth mentioning. At least mentioning that in 1948, this was an idea. And this kind of leads into some of your more popular ones. Like, I don't think we did too much research into it because they weren't consoles. Like, Tennis for Two.
Okay, Tennis for Two was the first video game that it was commercial, but it wasn't a home video game.
Yeah, no.
And Tennis for Two was played by one person. I don't like, why call it Tennis for Two? Why not Tennis for One?
Well, hold on. Let me count. 2. There you go.
Yeah. So, Tennis for Two was something that was designed and patented. I don't. Do I have that in here?
I don't know.
I do not,
But
because I was doing commercially viable ones.
So
you could pay to go. You could stand in line to play this at it's either a museum or something like that. But so basically, it was Pong.
Yeah.
So you get into the cabinet games, and the cabinet game makers wanted to get into the home market. They wanted their video games in the home. Could make more money that way. So the very first home video game console was the Magnavox Odyssey.
yes.
So that was released to the public in 1972. Again, the working prototype was made as early as 1966.
Yeah, the brown box.
Yeah. So, again, 1966, not everybody had a TV.
No.
So, the Odyssey was designed by Ralph Baer. There is a debate on whether this is a digital or analog system because of the additional analog circuitry for the output, the game control, and the components used. Now, I was looking through the generations.
Okay.
And this was listed in the second generation of video games. I don't know how. I think it was a mistake on that website that I was looking at.
Okay.
This is the first one out. So, there were not game cartridges per se for this. This is the one you were talking about.
Oh, okay.
Where you would put a card in, and basically the card would act as jumpers in the system to give you a different game.
Yeah. So you couldn't have an ever-expanding library of games because all of the games were still built into the console. You just had an external, like a key almost.
Right. Yeah, so all the games were programmed in it. Now, there was no sound. So Ralph Baer proposed a sound extension to Magnavox in 1973, but the idea was rejected. Asshole.
People don't want sound. That's too obnoxious, like a dog barking or...
Again, this one was the same way. It was sold with translucent plastic overlays that the gamer would put on their TV screens, and it would simulate colored graphics.
Colors!
But there were only 2 TV sizes that were supported by that. So, if you had a bigger or smaller TV, your color graphics were screwy. It was also sold with some dice, some poker chips, a score sheet to help you keep score, much like a traditional board game.
I didn't know that about the Magnavox.
Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't know it either until I did the research.
I knew about the slides, but I didn't know that it came with score sheets and poker chips and dice.
So this Ralph Baer was basically an innovator in this. He proposed the concept of an active cartridge containing electronic components, allowing them to have more game features. That was also rejected. It was game features, sound effects, variable net position, whatever that means, variable ball speed. The idea just didn't gain in.
People aren't going to want sound. They're not going to want expansion. People aren't even going to sit down and play.
Right. So that brings us to number 2, which is Pong, which was released in 1975. In 1972, Atari released Pong cabinet arcade game. 3 years later, a home version was released through Sears catalog and Sears stores.
Oh, Sears!
Immediately, Magnavox filed a lawsuit against Atari. I guess Pong was an Atari game. They filed a lawsuit against Atari in 1974. Eventually, Atari settled out of court because the company, Atari, couldn't afford all the legal fees.
Well, yeah.
And the lawsuit was basically, look, the paddle ball, boing, 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 was ours. We date back to 1966. You can't show that, so it's ours. So the settlement was for $1.5 million, paid in 8 payments.
Ouch.
In addition, Magnavox obtained full rights to any information on Atari products publicly announced and released over the next year. And that's important.
That's pretty big, because then they could get the jump and try and make their own. That's okay.
So basically, look, you stole business from us by putting out this game. So for the next year, anything you develop, or anything you publicly announce that you're developing or release over the next year, we get a chance to steal it from you. It's pretty much what they said.
Really? Yeah, really.
So, it's thought that Atari delayed the announcement of the Atari 2600 by a few months to avoid disclosing it under the agreement. Which was smart.
That's smart. That
because
is actually really
Magnavox
smart.
never again gained any market share in the home console, like any real market share. Atari was the big one in the early 70s. So they made out. So there's other notable entries in the Generation 1 video game console. The Epoch TV Tennis.
Okay.
Or Epic. It was a Japan-only release. Now, I know we decided we were going to do American releases, but I think it's worth mentioning. All of these Generation 1 games were Pong clones, which in reality, we call it a Pong clone because that's what we know.
Yeah.
But legitimately, it was a Magnavox clone, which was a clone for Tennis for Two.
Yeah. And I mean, sure, you can call them unoriginal or whatever, but even nowadays, we still have that similar, but instead of it being straight up a clone Pong, it's just the style of game.
Yeah.
Because now that's common, like having the different styles of games, but back then, oh.
But yeah, if we want to break down styles of games, like first person shooter, the Metroidvania.
You have my attention.
Those are all styles of games that are based on a game.
Yeah.
And so the same thing was happening in the industry all the way back in the beginning.
All the way.
What's this? Binatone TV Master. It was much like Pong, but it offered 4 games. Squash, which is tennis.
I was just looking.
Squash Practice, which is squash for 1.
Wall ball.
Football and tennis. And it was set up very much like the Pong home console with a attached controller with a knob, and that was it. And that would move your thing up and down, or back. The Coleco Telstar. It's another Pong clone.
Okay.
Color TV Game 6.
Color TV Game
This is the one
6.
I was talking about. This was the first one made by Nintendo. That's the first Nintendo foray into the home console.
Okay, I didn't know this.
It was only released in Japan, and it wasn't released till 1977, but it's still considered a first generation 1 home console.
Okay.
It was the first console to offer color games. Because by 77, color TVs were almost everywhere. You didn't see black and white TVs anymore.
Okay.
It was sort of a Pong clone, although it offered different ways to play Pong, including putting obstacles in the path of the ball.
Obstacle?
And that was game innovation back then, dude. Like, you had to hit it around through a hole up here, or a hole down here, where they had walls, and you had to hit it around. I didn't know this about this one. I didn't know the Color TV Game 6 was a Nintendo first. I didn't realize that.
I didn't realize that was a Nintendo. I recognize the name now that we're talking about it, but I had no idea that was Nintendo.
So, we're going to go into the Generation 2 now. I'm going to let you do the first one because you put some effort into this.
first one. Oh, the Fairchild Channel F. Man, they really had a hard time with these names.
Yeah. Well, or it was also called the Channel Fun.
Yeah, because that rolls off the tongue so much better.
Yeah. Anyway.
But yeah, the Channel F or Channel Fun hit the market in 1976.
Now, just so you know, at 1976, I was 6 years old.
Oh, so you were sitting down playing the Channel F.
I never played the Channel F. I did, however, play the original Atari 2600.
Okay.
Which is a Generation 2 video game.
All right. So, 1976, it was developed by Jerry Lawson. And it was manufactured, get this, manufactured by Fairchild Camera and Instrument. So, they weren't even a game company.
Nope.
They made cameras and other electrical instruments. I had read some stuff about them. I forgot to write it down.
I think they also make telescopes.
I think you're right. But they, if I'm remembering correctly from what I researched,
is that number right?
See, I'm not sure.
That's a lot.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
So, go on.
Yeah. So, Gerald came to them and he's like, hey, here's this idea. And they're like, sure.
There's money to be made there.
And why I'm putting so much emphasis on the Channel F is because the Channel F really changed everything about the home console world. Because what was unique about the Channel F is that it was the first console to use game cartridges. So you could release the console and then continue to make money off that console, because now, for the next however many years, you can release these game cartridges.
So this one was released in 76. It wasn't discontinued until 1983. 1983 is there's a significance in 1983 when it comes to the home game consoles.
Okay.
There was a crash in the home game console industry in 1983 where sales for everybody just dropped off.
I think I know.
Let's not get too far ahead of ourselves.
Okay.
This console sold for $170 roughly, which in 2021's money is $810. Expensive as hell.
Yeah. And the games on this, they were simple. They were simple. I was trying to find how much storage was on the cartridges. I couldn't find the specifications of the cartridges.
I do have that for the 2600 because it is amazing.
Yeah.
So when we get there, but you have on here that it sold 6.6 million units. That can't be right. That's got to be a mistake. Comment below if you think that's a mistake.
Yeah, and you know what? When you're editing this, just put it flashing right up above.
I'm gonna look. Because,
liar. Mistake.
6.6 million units. Because when we get down the way to some of the other ones, like the one sold like 350,000 units, and that was considered good.
Yeah.
So that's a lot.
Yeah, and this console, it had some success for a while. This is how the article I was reading worded it. It had short-lived success. Now, short-lived, that's a lot to sell in a short amount of time.
7 years.
7 years, too. So, yeah. It was, so first console to have
the cartridge,
interchangeable cartridges. And it launched with 26 games.
Wow.
Now, they were all very simple, and I guarantee you one of them was probably a Pong clone. Guaranteed. Probably multiple of them upon
Well, I do remember from reading this, because I looked, this was, at the time, one of the most powerful processors.
Okay.
One beats it out right after this, but at this time, this was, let's see, the resolution was 128 by 64, which is approximately 102 by 58 pixels visible. 64-bit system of RAM, which is half the amount of the Atari. And the Atari came out a year later, and kind of this.
Yeah.
However, there was one that dwarfed the Atari 2600. Which
What?
Oh yeah. Now this says the commercial success was very short-lived, so I highly doubt it was 6.6 million copies.
I might have grabbed the wrong number.
You might have been looking at the wrong one, or I don't know. I've done the same thing. So that is an impressive system, and it brought us to where we are today with the interchangeable cartridges. So the Atari 2600 was released September 1977, and it was originally called the Atari Video Computer System, the Atari VCS.
Okay.
Actually, it was on the box, but
you remember it as the 2600.
Well, I remember just as the Atari. We didn't call it the 2600. We just called it the Atari.
Well, because
that was all there was there.
Yeah, it was just the Atari.
So the games were stored on swappable cartridges, following the lead from the Fairchild Channel F. It came with a joystick controller and paddle controller.
Ooh.
The system came with the game Combat in early years, and then Pac-Man in later years. They started off with 2 kilobyte cartridges. That's it. 2 kilobytes.
2 kilobytes.
This document that I wrote here,
17. Yeah.
It's more than 2.
Yeah.
It's a lot more than 2. And that's only some font and size. That's it.
Yeah. So you couldn't even store this.
You couldn't even store this, but you could store it in the cartridge was capable of holding much more. But they started off with 2 kilobytes. So Combat. Now, I used to love the Combat game. So you had your joystick, and you could play tanks. There's a couple games you could play, but there were straight shooter tanks where you had to shoot straight. There were ricochet tanks where you could ricochet off the side. But I don't even think this was 8-bit when it started. I think this was like 6-bit.
Probably.
Graphic.
Probably. That'd be my guess.
By the end of its cycle in 83, 84, the games were using more than 4 times storage for the original game. Now, that's still only 12 kilobytes.
Well, hey, it's 4 times more.
Yeah. There was significant advancement in visual and gameplay as a system. It was significantly more advanced than the system was made to handle. So it was taxing. By the end, it was really taxing the processor, and that's why they came out with the next system. The game that is given the example there is Pitfall. It was one of my favorite games.
Oh yeah, Pitfall.
I love Pitfall.
I've never played it, but I know what you're talking about.
The original Pitfall, and then they've released other Pitfalls along the way.
Oh, I'm sure.
The poor quality, because of you're taxing the processor, really eroded consumer confidence in the system and the console. And then came E.T., the extraterrestrial. The game was made, and I'll tell you, that can be a episode all its own.
Yeah, because I have some information on E.T. that a lot of people don't know.
Let's just say the game was rushed to market.
Very rushed.
To get there for the holiday shopping season. It was critically panned, and it was a commercial failure. It was almost the downfall of the entire video game home gaming systems.
it nearly killed, and a lot of these big companies started looking for other places for money. A lot of these companies, like Nintendo, even, I vaguely remember, I can't remember what it is, but they reached out and bought shares in other places because they're like, no, they are spiraling down at 400 miles per hour, straight down to the ground.
Yeah. So Pac-Man was the best-selling game for this system over the life of it. Now, I will give you one guess what year E.T. was pushed to market.
Oh, no, I don't know. You might need to tell me. Oh, no.
Let me do a Google search real quick.
Oh.
And find out.
Anticipation's killing me. I definitely don't know this. I absolutely have no idea. I swear, I'm not lying. I'm for real here. I have no idea. No idea at all.
I'm just trying to make sure.
No. Oh no.
What year is that? 1982. Which basically was one of the catalysts for the downfall of the home video game console.
Oh my god.
This game, I played this game. I have played this game. I played it when it came out. Horrible.
I'm sure it was.
You were a little brown turd walking around a screen aimlessly. It was bad. Bad game. Bad game.
Bad game.
Very bad. So that brings us to our next entry, which is the Bally Astrocade. Or Bally Arcade.
See, this one I did not recognize at all.
This was designed by Midway.
Ooh, I like Midway.
Well, you'll see that, like Nintendo, Midway, Sega, all huge cabinet game manufacturers got into the home market in one way or another.
Oh, because there was money.
Yeah. This was released December 1977. It was part of what I would consider the great 8-bit era. I love the 8-bit games. I love them.
Can't blame you.
What I grew up with.
And I mean, like, me liking the 8-bit games, that's someone coming from an era with 4K and...
Yeah. Well, what's that game I just started playing? That's Stranding.
Death Stranding.
Death Stranding. The graphics on that are incredible. Incredible. But, I would take an 8-bit game over that sometime.
And you know what? Even in today's market, I still think there's a place for it.
I think there is too. Like, even nostalgia-wise, but this was a 3.579 megahertz processor, which at the time was speedy. This was the most powerful. This one is the most powerful of the first generation period. It never had mainstream success. And, it cost, because one of the reasons was it cost $100 more than the 2600.
Yikes.
I don't know much about the games for this. These other ones I just tipped my toe in a little bit just to get a little information.
Okay.
So the Intellivision, its limited release was 1979. Its full release was 1980.
Okay.
It had a unique controller that was copied by many after that. It was a circle with a numbered keypad.
Okay.
So each game came with an insert that went over the numbered keypad. And that's how you played the game.
Oh, okay. All right.
Another thing that they did with this, now this was made by Mattel. Another thing they did with this is the games themselves came in cardboard boxes.
Okay.
You'd open it up the way you go to a video game store now. Well, not even now. Everything's downloaded. But when you started going to the video, you would buy the box, CD-ROMs in it. Instructions are on one side, CD-ROMs in it. This would have the cartridge on one side in a plastic insert, and on the other side in a fold was the insert for the keypad, and then the instructions. You couldn't play some of these games without reading the instructions. Now, we never read the instructions, so we never got the full use of the game.
So maybe that's why people think retro games are so hard.
No one has the instructions anymore. So it would give you a couple copies of the keypad.
Okay.
Because after use, they get all crinkly, but that's how you played it. And, hold on. Is that Generation 2? Yeah, we're in Generation 2.
Oh, okay.
I was going to say, that's kind of, whatever. We came to Generation 2 when we got the 2600.
All right.
And,
Fairchild.
The channel up. Okay. That's when we jumped. So, before we go to Generation 3, we're going to take a short break here.
Hey, this is Sammy. I'm here with my hetero life mate, Yen.
Hey, Sammy.
Hey there, Yen. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good.
So, we're part of the Barrel Age Chicks. And who else is part of us?
Oh, we've got Harley, Snow, and Crystal.
And ourselves, of course.
Mm-hmm.
If you like hearing about movies, podcasting about movies, if you like hearing about music, or pretty much anything, come and check us out. Come hear the chick side of things. We can be found on
Spotify and Anchor.
And we are also under the Deluxe Edition Network. Come on out and hear the chick side of things.
Come on.
It's deluxeeditionnetwork.com. That's a network that we're on. It's a bunch of great guys and gals.
Very great.
Everybody has their different style of podcasting. Everybody has different topics in podcasting. So just about anything you're interested in, you can find there. You have the Deluxe Edition podcast, which is pop culture. They do a lot of interviews with people from Hollywood, from movies.
It's crazy who they get on there.
I know, I love it. You have Barrel Age Flicks, who does movies. You have Barrel Age Chicks, who also do movies. I just listened to their first one today. They just started in January. You have Metalhead Journeys, music, heavy metal music. So you have Bev's Video Kingdom, which I love listening to. 10 Cent Beer Night podcast, Horsing Around, World's True Crime, great podcasts, Graveyard Club, Return to Living Flat, Real Drunks. I love listening to Real Drunks. They're funny. And of course, Take on the World.
No way. Where can I listen to them?
You can listen to them right here.
Right here, right now?
Right now. So, every month they have a podcast of the month, for January. With everybody. Because switching up how they're doing it, because there's so many shows on this network now, they're going to have 2 podcasts of the month every month.
Okay.
So December, it was 10 Cent Beer Night podcast. And we took most of December off, so I'm going to give them props right now. But, February, I know he told me, but I forget.
The monthly double feature.
Yeah, that's what it will be. Monthly double feature from now on. So check it out. DeluxeEditionNetwork.com. And we're back. And we're on Generation 3.
All right.
So, in Generation 3, you have the SG-1000.
Oh, it sounds advanced.
It does sound advanced. This is Sega's first entry into the home game console. Until then, Sega primarily was arcade cabinet games. But in 1982, there was a downturn in arcades. I don't remember that because I was 12 years old. I was killing at the arcade. Nathan had the honor and privilege to watch me play pinball the other day.
Yes. It was magnificent. Now, obviously, I'm from an age where things are less analog. So, not many people that I know are going out playing pinball every day, but it was magnificent.
We left the establishment with a plethora of free games on the machine,
There's a good likelihood next time we go back, there'll still be 3 games.
unless they unplug it and
yeah.
then pour us.
Your
But-
high score.
I love pinball. I used to be a pinball wizard.
Used to, you still are.
So, I don't remember this downfall in arcade, downturn in arcade. Not then. A bunch of years after that, maybe 8 or 9 years after that, yeah, arcades kind of went out of favor. So it was released July 15th, 1983. The third iteration of this was Sega Mark III in 1985. So all Sega 1000 games are reverse compatible with the Mark III and the Japanese version of the Master System.
Okay.
So now this is the first time I saw all the Sega or SG 1000 games you could play on the Mark III or the Master System. Mark III was the third iteration of the SG 1000. There was the SG 1000, SG 1002, created, and then the Mark III. You could play all those games on the Mark III and the Master System, which is the first time I saw reverse compatibility, which became a big thing as when you got into the market with the Xbox.
Yeah.
We bought what was the second Xbox?
360.
The 360. I made sure we got a 360 that was reverse compatible because there was games on the original Xbox that I wanted to continue to play.
Yeah, and I mean, I think because of, like, your particularity with that, backwards compatibility backwards compatibility is a huge thing for me. Like, if a console doesn't have backwards compatibility, my rating of it goes down by 2 points.
It was a big, like, the 360 when we got it, there was a version that was not backwards compatible.
Yeah.
And then one that was. That was what?
Was.
There was. There was one that was. Were the words that I was trying to get out of my mouth. And we made sure that we got the one that was.
Yeah, because now that you say that, I remember this. I remember trying to find it and making sure it was backwards compatible.
So that brings us to the Nintendo Entertainment System, the NES.
The NES.
As you'll see at the end of this, it's confirmed my thought on the NES. I think the NES is one of the greatest systems ever to come out. Yeah. It was released in Japan as Family Computer FC, or Famicom.
Famicom Family Computer.
In 1983. And in the U.S. as NES on October 18th, 1985. We had to wait 2 years here to get this system.
Yeah, with a lot of these Nintendo releases, that's a trend.
So Nintendo was also another cabinet game maker in the 80s, and they moved to the home console, I would say in spades, with the NES, because the number of NES games that are out there
is insane.
It is. This system was one of the best selling of its time, and it really helped the industry after the game crash of '83, or the home video game crash of '83.
Yeah,
which was caused by.
Don't say it.
Not enough can be said about this console, and this could easily be an episode all its own.
Oh my god. Yeah. If you have nothing else to say about the NES, I do have one cool
you
little
say as
factoid.
much as you want, bro.
Okay.
That's enough. Moving on. Go ahead.
So, fantastic console. And this is a little fun fact. And I hope this is still correct. If it isn't still correct, it just changed recently and I haven't heard about it yet. But the NES, on the bottom of the console, it has a phone number you can call for assistance with issues with your console, that number should still be supported. It's still a number that you can call and get some level of assistance with issues with your console.
Wow, that's amazing.
And I think part of that is due to the success.
Well, IGN in 2011 named the NES the greatest video game console of all time. I would concur. Now, let me ask you something. How much NES have you played?
Not a massive amount. I've played, well, my friend.
This guy you know.
No, this one's a friend.
Okay, someone you know.
He has an obsession with the retro consoles, and he has an NES.
I had a friend, or someone I knew, who had an obsession with Atari. And I think he owned almost every single Atari title.
That's crazy. People would kill for a library like that nowadays.
Now, I think the Activision system also played the Atari cartridge.
Oh, no, I would not know.
But go ahead.
But, yeah, it's just crazy. I've gotten to play a fair bit, not a massive bit. I've played at least a baker's dozens of games on it. At least once.
Do you have a favorite NES game?
Mario. Very, very standard take. I know.
Zelda.
He didn't have Zelda. It's hard to find.
I would sit up in this living room and play Zelda for hours.
Oh my god, if I had a chance to, I would too. Because I've seen that Zelda. And, you know, it's simple compared to what we have nowadays, but you have to take in mind the time. But it still looks incredibly fun.
I loved it. So, we'll move on to the Master System. It was another Sega entry. It was originally remodeled version export of the Sega Mark III. And it was launched in the US in 1986.
Okay.
I don't really know much else about it. I was not a Master System fan.
Okay.
I think NES so dominated the gaming industry at that time that anything else, Atari had, like, the next one is the Atari 7800, but in between the 7800, they also had the 5200, which was not the 2600. So I don't know when the 5200 was introduced, but Atari went downhill and never recovered from ET.
I'm sure. I am sure.
So also in this era was the Commodore 64. And now I have to switch to my Windows here because my research, for some reason, did not say.
Seems to be a trend.
The Commodore 64. Now, I didn't have a Commodore 64, but I had it was a Radio Shack version of it. So the Commodore 64 is more of a home computer, an 8-bit home computer. It was released in 82. The Commodore 64 dominated the low-end computer market for a long time. What was the Tandy?
Andy.
I think Tandy was the Radio Shack version.
Okay. Sounds familiar.
Now, I remember using this, and you could do basic DOS programming on this.
All right.
But the Tandy that I had, you couldn't save. So you could spend all day writing that program. As soon as you turn that system off, you lost everything. I think with the Commodore 64, you could put a cartridge in it.
Like a floppy.
It wasn't a floppy. It was a hard cartridge.
Oh, okay.
I think. But when it was released, this was like 500, 600. Yeah, $595, which now is about $1,600. It was discontinued in 94. I was not a huge Commodore.
As
Either.
recent as 94. Sorry, that just hit.
That's the Commodore 64. It was basically a home computer. It wasn't much. They're the carts.
Ah, okay.
I don't think it was as popular as it could have been, but the Commodore 64 was well known at the time.
Okay. I mean, but now, of course, my clique is a bunch of computer nerds, but everyone I know at least knows of the Commodore. So it has left some lasting impact on the world.
Right. So that's the Generation 3 wrap up. The Generation 4, you have PC Engine.
Okay.
It was PC Engine Super Graphics. By Nintendo?
I have no idea.
NEC Home Electronics. Don't remember this one? I don't know much about it.
It looks like it was a copycat console almost, though.
It looks like it attached to something else. Oh, that's to a CD-ROM edition.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, after that you had the Sega Genesis.
Okay.
Which I had a Sega Genesis. Loved it. 16-bit-ish, I think. That's 16-bit? Yeah, 16-bit. 4th generation home console. They had another one out at that time. I don't know what the hell it was called.
I don't think it wasn't the Mega Drive, was it?
It might have been. I see that there, but I don't remember the Mega Drive. I remember some other Sega consoles, but the Genesis was the last great Sega console. They primarily went into making video games after.
Well, they couldn't compete with Nintendo's consoles because Nintendo does what Sega does.
What was the next? Saturn. The Sega Saturn just went downhill. And then there was, after the Sega Saturn, there was the Dreamcast. Was not a big fan of the Dreamcast, but the Dreamcast was like equivalent to the GameCube, but the GameCube had more kids games. The Dreamcast had more adult-ish focus games.
Okay.
Like the Xbox.
Do you have any idea where the Sega CD might have fallen in line for you?
I don't remember it.
Okay.
I don't remember it. Like, it's not even on this list, I don't think.
That might have been a region locked console.
It could be. Like I said, there's some of the Japanese ones that I don't have.
Yeah.
There's this Neo Geo AES that I have pulled up here. It sort of looks like a Sega system. It actually looks like a Sega Saturn.
Okay.
It was a Japanese release. Again, I don't know much about it, but it was another game system that derived from cabinet games. I'm kind of quickly going through the 4th generation because Sega Genesis and Super NES were the only two that stood out there.
Yeah, Super NES.
Even with the Super NES, I preferred the original.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was just so stuck on that, Legend of Zelda. The NES came out with the little light gun for the shooting game.
The Nintendo Zapper.
The Duck Hunt. We're not going over the handhelds, but there's some handhelds on here that, in '87 that came out that were like precursors to what's out now. So Generation 5, I never even heard of that one.
No idea what that
No.
is.
3DO Interactive I've heard of. The Atari Jaguar I've heard of. The Saturn I heard of. PS. I've heard of PS.
I think I know the PS.
The PlayStation I had.
PlayStation.
I had ridiculous amounts of time in some PlayStation games.
Oh my god! Even when I was little and we still had PlayStation,
Yeah.
I probably killed that thing.
Nintendo 64.
Well, either the original PlayStation, the 64, or the game. One of those was my first console. I bounced back between all three of them a lot when I was little, but one of those three.
Well, I know the PS was Lex. This is 93. Now, I don't know exactly when, between 93 and 98 is Generation 5. But the two standouts there are PlayStation and Nintendo 64.
Yeah.
And really, PlayStation, only one that is still surviving. What's Nintendo's game now?
The Switch.
The Switch and the Wii. And the Switch is a handheld.
Yeah, the Switch is a hybrid console, but yeah.
So PlayStation is now, as we talked about before, PlayStation was the first one to use the discs.
They're most well known for it, but I wouldn't say they're the first. I believe.
Who was the first then?
Well, I know the Sega CD used it.
I never heard of it. Not even on the list. Doesn't count.
Well, I know PlayStation wasn't the first CD.
When we did our video game one, I think it was. I didn't bring those up because,
Okay.
I had it in my original research and for some reason it did not save. Probably operator error. But Generation 6 was started in what they would consider 98. You got the Sega Dreamcast, PlayStation 2.
PlayStation 2.
The GameCube, which I know you GameCubed, like, relentlessly. And the Xbox.
I also killed the disc tray on that one.
And then Generation 7 was the 360, the PS3, and the Wii.
I also killed the PlayStation 3.
And I think this is the only generation we've had all the major ones. And you see the Wii, the PS3, and Xbox. Now, Xbox is Microsoft, but they're the only ones, like, staying alive now. At this point. You have the Generation 8 is your PS4, your Xbox One, and your Wii U. I don't think we had a Wii U.
We did, but it stayed back in Lexi.
Well, Lexi had one, we didn't.
Yeah.
And that's takes us up to 2012.
Yeah. Right now,
But here's where the 5200, the Atari 5200 came out in 82. 7800 in 86. Atari Jaguar, I thought. A Jaguar, like, stuff. Let's see if that, Sega CD's on here. It's not. Genesis, Game Gear, Saturn,
telling you the CD was the thing.
Nomad.
Never heard of Nomad.
PlayStation, PlayStation 2, PlayStation Portable.
Yeah, the PSP.
Oh. PlayStation Vita? 4?
Yeah,
Xbox 360, Xbox One, but now there's the Xbox 10, right?
Yeah, the Xbox Series X and S.
Right.
The only difference is that the S is a cheaper option because it's all digital.
Okay.
So it's less components. And then PlayStation 5 with
The refrigerator.
the X
Oh.
was the refrigerator.
Okay.
That's the one that they made an actual refrigerator. The 5 they call the Wi-Fi router.
Okay. Yeah, that's right.
And this is getting into this is getting into another discussion, but it's just not. It's got four exclusives. 4 games that you can only play on the 5.
I would love to go through the video game history, the game history, to when they started getting exclusive, because I read over it. There was one system where it was the first system to have system exclusive games in the modern era, not back in
Okay.
like where you like Call of Duty. You know how you can get Call of Duty on multiple systems, but there were some games that came out. If you wanted to play it, you had to play it on this system.
That's how a lot of
Which is how they originally started, but then
Yeah.
it went away.
it went away. Everyone had it, and it was all about the better graphics or what.
So that is a brief, summarized history of video game consoles.
Yeah, especially on the more recent side.
Yeah, the fact is I ran out of time in researching.
Yeah.
And what I did research did not save. And I would have to blame a gremlin of some sort.
But why are you looking at me?
I'm just saying, I'm looking at you because I'm talking. I'm not blaming you. I'm not saying you're the gremlin. Are you?
No.
Okay. Or operator error, which is highly unlikely. So that's your first installment of Take on the World. Nerd Stop. Or what did I say?
Nerd Stop.
No, the second one. I coined a phrase at the beginning, nerd.
You expect me to remember?
Yes, I do. No?
That's funny.
All right, I have to look it up because I thought it was pretty good. Pretty witty, if I do say so myself. So if you like nerdy content,
Or you like my gorgeous face and wonderful personality, because that's obviously what brings everyone here.
not sure that that's true.
Come on, runs in the family.
That's true. I plan on releasing one of our nerd podcasts once a month.
Okay.
I don't know what our next topic will be.
I'll figure it out. I'll wake up in the middle of the night in a cold sweat. I'll be like, oh.
But stay tuned for that. So we took on the nerdy world of video game consoles.
Yeah.
Now you go take on the world and be a nerd while you're doing it.
Yes. Rise of the Nerds.
This podcast is part of the Deluxe Edition Network. To find other great shows on the network, head over to deluxeeditionnetwork.com. That's deluxeeditionnetwork.com.